In the 1990s, Warner Bros. Animation was in the middle of a television renaissance, with cult shows including Tiny Toon Adventures, Animaniacs, its spin-off Pinky and the Brain, Tazmania, Silvester and Tweety Mysteries, Histeria, and the Bruce Timm produced Batman and Superman animated series, all proving extremely popular with audiences and critics. In September 1995, Warner Bros. Animation introduced the world to Freakazoid. Produced by Amblin Entertainment and overseen by director Steven Spielberg, who had also overseen Tiny Toon Adventures and Animaniacs. Spielberg had seen and liked Batman the Animated Series, leading him to contact his producer Bruce Timm into helping create a new superhero show, which would be the third animated series Spielberg would produce for Warner Bros.
Well, you can't fault Spielberg for having good taste.
Bruce Timm's regular writing collaborator, Paul Dini, was also brought on to help develop the series. Dini had written some very notable episodes for several of those shows, and with Bruce Timm had co-created the character Harley Quinn for Batman the Animated Series, a character who would grow to become so popular that she would later be brought into the DC Comics and its cinematic universe.
These guys are both a big deal.
The two would come up with the character Freakazoid, an edgy superhero with a manic personality. After developing the premise, Timm handed over developing the show to Tom Ruegger, who had previously worked with Spielberg on developing Tiny Toon Adventures and Animaniacs. The series introduces us to 17-year-old computer nerd Dexter Douglas, who, while surfing the internet...
I should state right now that this is the 90s idea of what the internet was.
is accidentally sucked into cyberspace and infused with all its knowledge and power, turning him into Freakazoid, an insane superhero with a mixture of great and frankly weird superpowers, which he uses to battle an array of eclectic supervillains, but mostly just goof about and spend his time in the company of attractive women. Main theme and intro.
Super Toon extraordinaire, Freakazoid, Freakazoid, runs around in underwear, Freakazoid, Freakazoid, rescues Washington DC, Freakazoid, Freakazoid, till have something better's on TV, Freakazoid, Freakazoid, his brain is overloaded, it has a chocolate coating, textbook case for Sigmund Freud, Freakazoid, Freakazoid.
Check out Dexter Douglas, nerd computer ace, when surfing on the internet, there was actual cyberspace, he turned into a Freakazoid, who's strong and super quick. He drives the villains crazy, cause he's a lunatic.
His home base is a Freakaland, Freakazoid, Freakazoid, like a Harvard cuts his hair, Freakazoid, chimpanzee, rides around in a freak-mobile, Freakazoid, Freakazoo, hopes to make a movie deal, Freaka-me, Freaka-you, he's here to save the nation, so stay tuned to this station, if not we'll be unemployed, Freakazoid, Freakazoid, Freakazoid.
Phenomenal. This is one of the all-time great animated theme tunes, perfectly conveying the tone of the show and what is to be expected from its characters and stories.
So catchy.
Story and characters. Timm originally created Freakazoid to be a serious adventure show with some comedic undertones, coming up with the name Freakazoid, which Timm said in later interviews just kind of jumped out of him. However, his initial idea for the adventure show would change after each meeting with Spielberg, with the concept leaning more and more towards zany comedy. Timm originally envisioned the show to be similar to Spider-Man in that it would focus on a teenage superhero, but it soon reached a point where it shared more in common tonally with Tiny Toon Adventures and Animaniacs. Timm felt that this was not an area of writing that he had a flair for and decided to leave the series development to his writing team. Replacing him was Tom Ruegger, who has written and produced for multiple animation and television shows, and was one of the main driving forces of the 90s Warner Bros. Animation renaissance. He also has 30 years of experience writing for properties including Hanna-Barbera and even He-Man. He is a massive deal. Ruegger was the natural choice to be brought in to redevelop the series after Bruce Timm left. His version of Freakazoid used some of Timm's designs and concepts, but radically altered the concept to become the comedy series that was more to Spielberg's liking. He then began writing stories for the series and came up with a pile of very short segments. Spielberg liked what Ruegger had written, but wanted longer stories for the series as well, Ruegger then asked writers John McCann and Paul Ruegger to come on and write longer, more elaborate stories for the show's later episodes. Both had worked extensively with Ruegger on his previous Warner Bros. Shows. Ruegger's short segments featured in the first season. Each had their own theme songs, title cards and cast, and only rarely crossed over into the continuity of the main show. Segments of note included the British superhero Lord Bravery, a near-carbon copy of John Cleese's Basil Fawlty from the cult classic British comedy Fawlty Towers, who like Basil is also very snooty, cynical and rather unwilling as a superhero, while also receiving very little respect and recognition from the general public, as well as his wife and mother-in-law.
Nigel! Ow! I thought he was impervious to pain.
I am impervious to... Do I take it the ficus hurled at my head was meant as some sort of signal?
The tea's ready.
Then get it!
Well, you are up, darling.
Oh, yes, let me get the tea. I'd hate to see either of you actually have to walk the 3 feet into this frightening, mysterious new world we call a kitchen. You might get lost or attacked by the dishwasher. Your tea?
You forgot the sugar.
Most people your age die. Why won't you?
There's no need to be rude, Nigel.
Not being rude, darling, merely a suggestion.
Another hero in the show is the Huntsman, who is what Robin Hood would be like if portrayed by Charlton Heston. He can never find enough crime to fight and secretly suspects that the police are hiding crimes from him. Other segments of note include Toby Danger, a somewhat loving parody of Johnny Quest.
It's hilarious.
And the Lawn Gnomes, a group of lawn gnomes that come to life at night in a parody of the popular series Gargoyles. As the writers got a better feeling for the series' direction, the episodes became more in keeping with the traditional 3-act structure. One of Freakazoid's main strengths was its supporting cast, which contains some fun original characters. Standouts include Cosgrove, the city's old and grizzled chief of police, who is also Freakazoid's best friend. The two have what can only be described as a bromance, and often go on random day trips to surreal-themed museums and festivals, often while crimes are occurring. Other characters include Freakazoid's girlfriend, Steph, who is jealous of the attention Cosgrove gets over her, Roddy McStew, Freakazoid's mentor, and arguably the most offensive Scottish stereotype ever. The Lobe, a criminal super genius, their relationship is odd. Mr. Chubbykins, Dexter's cat, who is responsible for his transformation, Freakazoid's nemesis, Armando Gutierrez, and Fanboy, a stereotypical nerd who has delusions of becoming Freakazoid's sidekick. A running joke of the series is Freakazoid's ongoing quest to find a sidekick, with one candidate literally named Expendable Lad. Design and style. It's dated well due to his stylistic design, with some intentional similarities to Batman the Animated Series.
Hey, if you're gonna steal, steal from the best.
Cartoonist Mike Allred has criticised the show and its lead character as plagiarising his comic book, Madman, asserting that the title characters share several personality traits and wear similar costumes featuring a chest emblem, including an exclamation mark. Bruce Timm did say to Allred that Madman was a direct inspiration for the show, though no official recognition was ever made by Warner's or by Steven Spielberg, whom Mike Allred had written to on the subject. Action. The action in Freakazoid isn't its strongest aspect. As mentioned earlier, it does share a fair few similarities with the Paul Dini era DC shows and aesthetics, but in the case of the action, the show is far more focused on comedic moments, which is in no way a bad thing. Soundtrack. One of the greatest aspects of all the Warner Bros. Animated shows were their soundtracks. With Animaniacs, a 35-piece orchestra was employed, an idea that Steven Spielberg had that really added atmosphere to the show. All of the series being made at the time contained at least one original piece of music in each episode. The music for Freakazoid was written by Richard Stone, Steve Bernstein, Julie Bernstein, Gordon Goodwin, and Tim Kelly, all veterans of the industry. Richard Stone and Tom Ruegger wrote the main theme song, which won a Daytime Emmy. Julie Bernstein was also nominated for a Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Original Song for Invisibo, featured in the episode Freaka Panel. The series is full of original songs and employs its soundtrack nicely for comedic timing, something that has helped Freakazoid maintain a quality in the presence of more modern cartoons. Voice cast. Co-writer Paul Ruegger also voices Freakazoid, bringing to the character certain mannerisms and characteristics matching that of comedic actor Jerry Lewis. Cosgrove is voiced by film and television legend Ed Asner, who is most recognisable for his role on Pixar's Up. Cosgrove and Freakazoid's bromance doesn't make any sense, and is made even more the funnier by the grizzled and at some times seemingly apathetic personality Asner brings to the role. David Warner, who is best known for his fantastic performance as evil in Terry Gilliam's masterpiece Time Bandits, is no stranger to voice work. He also voiced Ra's al Ghul in Batman the Animated Series, and is clearly enjoying himself as the villainous Loeb. Industry legend Rob Paulson regularly lends his talents throughout the series. Jim Cummings and Tim Curry, still to this day the greatest Captain Hook, also lend their voices. But real note should be given to Jeff Bennett, who plays a whole host of characters, including the series standouts Lord Bravery, The Huntsman, Candlejack, and Cave Guy. Probably most famous for being the voice of Johnny Bravo and Star Wars' Kyle Katarn. He has been in literally every cartoon made since 1984. However, as impressive as that is, it's nothing compared to Frank Welker, the ultimate veteran of voice acting, who started in the industry in 1969. His most recognisable roles are as Fred in almost every version of Scooby-Doo, Nibbler in Futurama, and most importantly as the original Megatron in Transformers. It would take a whole episode to do Welker's career justice. His range of voice and animal noises is matched only by D. Bradley Baker. In Freakazoid, he does a fantastic job of playing Steven Spielberg, but perhaps more importantly, Mr. Chubbykins.
Well? What does that mean, meow? Bring the animal psychologist in. Ask the kitty how he activated the floor.
Meow, meow, meow. Meow. He says he's very sad.
Oh, go away.
The Clancy Brown effect. Whenever I watch any cartoon, the first thing I check is does it feature Clancy Brown. Clancy Brown is one of the all-time greats of cinema and television. Most famous for his roles are as the Kurgan in Highlander and Lex Luthor in the Bruce Timm DC era. Still to this day, the best Lex Luthor. The man has done a lot of voice work over the years, to the point where his presence has almost been a constant in shows I watched growing up. As a result, any show not featuring him will never in my eyes be truly great.
Oh, Freakazoid. You were doing so well.
How meta is it? The humour in Freakazoid relied heavily on slapstick, parody and pop culture references, with frequent use of stock footage. Due to the series being meta-fiction, much of its humour was self-aware, often breaking the fourth wall. An example being straight after the introduction of the Freakmobile, the show goes immediately into an impromptu commercial for a toy version. The show further parodies Batman by introducing the Freakalair, complete with its own butler. Freakazoid later replaces him with the character Professor Jones, voiced by the late Jonathan Harris, who famously portrayed Dr. Smith in cult classic Lost in Space. Professor Jones is exactly the same character. The show simply made him Freakazoid's sidekick. This wasn't the only time the show got an iconic actor to recreate a role. Freakazoid's nemesis, Armando Gutierrez, is based on and voiced by the late Ricardo Montalban, who is clearly enjoying parodying his performance as Khan from Star Trek II.
At least let the lad go.
No, I cannot.
Why?
Because he tasks me. He tasks me. Round the moons of Snibia, I chuckle at thee. Beyond the Corpian clouds, I chuckle more at thee. Revenge is a dish best served with pinto beans and muffins. Kirk, old friend, Oh, sorry. Goodbye.
Cameo appearances were also a major element of the show's humour, At various times, Freakazoid hosted appearances by characters from other Warner Bros. Cartoons, such as Pinky and the Brain and the Animaniacs. Portrayals of many celebrities, including producer Steven Spielberg, voiced by Frank Welker, regularly feature, with guest appearances by such random figures as Jack Valenti, Leonard Maltin, and Mark Hamill as themselves. The most strange, however, is Norm Abram, who is famous for his carpentry work on American television. He has an entire episode dedicated to him, which is also a parody of Oscar-winning film Amadeus.
So meta.
Which is one of the reasons that Freakazoid failed to receive a second season. Though well received by critics and established fans of the Warner's animation brand, it wasn't given a stable time slot when first broadcast, which affected its ratings, and some audiences didn't fully understand the humour. The show basically wasn't really made for children. Even its slapstick was self-aware at times, which mixed with a fantastic score and high quality production values has allowed the show to age well. It's a shame as Freakazoid was just starting to find its feet towards the end, and clearly would have developed its core ideas and introduced more characters to its fun world. 4 Megaminds. Before Deadpool, there was Freakazoid.
Well, before Freakazoid and Deadpool, there was Madman, if we're going to be really honest.
Regardless, it's a real hidden gem. If you like Animaniacs, you will very likely enjoy this. It's just good fun, and contains some surprising heart, which isn't so bad for a cartoon show whose creators to this day admit that they never really knew what Freakazoid was supposed to be about.
Look at me, I'm smoking. It's bloody cold in here.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, then please like and subscribe, and feel free to check out some of my other videos. Until next time.